Hi, it's Michael Pilarski with another video from Friends of the Trees Botanicals about medicinal plants. And today is May 27th, 2022. And here we are in an aspen grove, Populus tremuloides. It's tremulous leaves. They're also called quaking aspen because of the quaking of the leaves. And the quaking is so that the are reflecting light away from them. They're usually at high elevations a lot of times in the mountains, and if they get too much heat in a hot weather, they tend to be a hot weather interior tree, the leaves by fluttering don't get as hot, and as a result they reflect light. So when you use them in permaculture systems, the plants that have fluttering silvery leaves reflect light onto the gardens or the surrounding plants. So in a sense, you could call them a light concentrator or sender. Now, they're found throughout, it's one of the most widespread trees in North America. It's found over so much of the western U.S. And so it's very common, iconic tree of the West. And on this one side here, you'll see that all the trees are pretty uniformly just going straight up. It's like these ones go straight up. But if we turn around and look at the trees on this other side, and especially this looking back through here, there we go. See how they're there's a lot more curvatures. They're very distinct in that a lot of them curve, and the thing that's going on here is the straight ones are one clone and the curved ones are a different clone. So these trees that you see here are not individuals, they are a colony of trees with one unified root system. And as a result, as over time these clones can get quite large, acres to even hundreds of acres. So some of the root systems can live a long time, even though the tops come and go. They're relatively short-lived top, 50, 100 years generally. But the root system can be thousands of years old. So we could say that the aspens are some of the largest known living organisms in terms of weight and size, and also one of the longest living organisms on the planet. So that's pretty special to know about the aspen. Now, the aspen, as we looked across here, you'll see that there's a great deal of understory here. So this is a really special habitat for our area to have this much understory, because a lot of light comes through, particularly early in the season. So there's enough light to support a relatively lush understory, and it's a wet ecosystem. Aspens always grow in a moist soil kind of place. So one of the understory items we have in here is the star-flowered Solomon seal, which is Millicina stellata. And that is actually has a medicinal root, as well as many of its other relatives. At any rate, it's a nice little rich understory. You'll find plants in here you won't find elsewhere in our coniferous forests or fields. So very special. So what else could we say? Let me look at this one over here. Here's a chunk, and if I rub my hands on it, I get all this dust, or I would say it's a what would you call it? A dry powder. It's a powder, and the bark is coated with this powder, and again, it's a protective influence. So this is a sunscreen for the plant. But humans could also, if you're in hot elevations with the aspen around, you can use some of the sunscreen from this. So next we'll go and show you how we actually harvest the bark, because the bark is a medicinal product of this tree. It has the same kinds of properties as willow or cottonwood or red osier dogwood. In other words, it's anti-inflammatory, analgesic, pain-killing. So we'll go get some. We are at another part of the aspen grove. Here there's a lot of young stuff, a lot of young shoots. There's even a lot of really young shoots out here. So this colony is advancing into this meadow. It will gradually swallow more of the meadow as it's able to. And one of the ways it spreads, of course, is look at all the seeds. It has fluffy, cottony seeds that float off in the wind and go for a long ways, especially in a good windstorm. And then if they find a suitable place, they can germinate. So these, right now, there's floating in the air. There's all sorts of this. The spider webs, I noticed, are getting really covered in it. I wonder if the spiders can clean the webs or if they're just kind of a little pissed. But there's a lot of this floating around, and then all this stuff is going to fall off and hit the ground too. And this is a fertilizing event for the forest. See, the forest is fertilizing itself by shedding all this stuff. It hits the forest floor, gets digested, and the nutrients go back into the canopy, fall down again. So the nutrients are cycling, and these trees are good nutrient cyclers. This stuff digests really nicely. Lots of organisms like it. So, go, Aspen, go. So where I like to harvest aspen is where you have a whole colony of young shoots. In a sense, you could say, I'm going to take this one here, and I'm going to say, a little tougher than it looks because the tool's a bit shy. So it's like taking a hair from a dog or something. I haven't killed a tree. This is just one of all these are related underground. So I've just taken off a little bit of photosynthetic capability, but there's plenty left. So I could prune a couple of dozen stems out of here, no problem. Wouldn't hurt anything really. So what I like to do, of course you can end up with some nice poles out of this too. But in this case here, I'm gonna maybe go for a long one. One long pole here. So this is pretty clean, but if I have a stem that has a lot of lichen on it, sometimes they have lichen, you can brush the lichen, but in this case here, there's really not much lichen. So I'm just going to sort of brush it a little bit, or brush it, or rub it a little bit here just to clean it up a little bit. And if you're having to actually really brush, or if I had a lot of lichen on there, I had to flake it off, that is called rossing the bark. So when you're cleaning the bark off, you don't want to have contaminants in your mix. So this is a good time of year to do it because the sap's really flowing at this time of year. And so I would generally have a tarp here in front of me so that I catch everything. But we'll pick this up here in a second. This is a nice clean environment. So I can just strip it with a butter knife nicely. This is a butter knife without serrations. There's no serrations. It's not a steak knife. This is just a plain old-fashioned butter knife. And then once I have that part done, this is coming off pretty good. But if you have much of the cambium still there, you can go across it with your blade held horizontal. So the trick is, how long of a strip can you get? And these strips, once they dry, they curl up and they're called quills. So I'm getting bark quills here. And I would wear, right now I'm not wearing a glove, but you strip for very long without a glove and I'm going to get a blister. So you wear a glove when you're stripping, when you're holding these knives and stripping the bark. So this is peeling really nicely. Again, lots of sap flow. This is the time of year. You don't do this in winter when the sap's down. It's really hard to peel. This is springtime's the best. So here's our strip bark. This will go in the dryer. It's such long, strings that I might actually cut it a few times just to make it a little bit more manageable. But the anti-inflammatory, analgesic, I should say. And also, it's interesting, I just realized also that the cambium of this species was used by native peoples as a food. Now, probably they weren't going for the small wood, though, you know, where they, I imagine that they were going for, maybe they're going for bigger trees and they get a thicker bark, but they use the cambium as a food. So in some way or another, it was one of the, you might say, short-term survival food. I don't think it was like a staple, but it was something that would keep you alive in the spring if you had, things were tight. Okay, well, if you have aspen in your area, go out and get some of this great medicinal product for you and your family. And otherwise, check us out at Friends of the Trees Botanicals. Bye-bye. The sound of the wind in the aspens. Every tree sings its own song depending on its architecture. Conifers or the ponderosa is quite a bit different sound than the aspens. We might say that in a blind person or a person who was really sensitive with the ears could tell what ecosystem or trees were around by the sound.